And welcome into the Thursday edition of Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I was actually, though, thinking that waking up, we might at least know when game one between what we know is Preds Canucks would be, but we still do not know that.
We don't. I'm hoping that by show's end we do. That would be awesome, but I guess we'll wait and see on that front.
Hold your breath.
Yeah, I guess not. Nick Keyser, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm just as excited as anybody else is to cover a game at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night and be with you Yahoos at 6 a.m. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, we could be an interesting series on that standpoint. No question about that. It is official. The Predators taking on the Vancouver Canucks in the first round of the playoffs. So it was interesting last night, Joe. So Dallas and St. Louis were playing, and after two periods, St. Louis was up 1-0 on Dallas, and I was like, oh, boy, here we go. If they can finish this off, then Vancouver's going to have a chance on Thursday to win it, and then they would be the number one seed. But not to be. Dallas comes back, ties it up in the third period. Game gets to overtime, which meant that the Predators were definitely going to be playing the Vancouver Canucks. And then Dallas ultimately ends up winning in the shootout, but it didn't really matter after that point. So the matchup is official. We've been talking about it for a few days now, the Predators and the Vancouver Canucks, and now we know that's what it's going to be. I would hope at some point today we're going to figure out when game one is. I don't know that we're going to figure out when the whole series kind of schedule shapes up today, but hopefully at least game one, and then we'll just kind of go from there. But the game one times have been announced and dates have been announced for the Eastern Conference, so you got two East games on Saturday, the Maple Leafs and the Bruins, the Islanders and the Hurricanes. And then on Sunday, those have been announced too in the East, Lightning, Panthers, Capitals, Rangers. So the Eastern Conference taken care of. Now all those matchups are set in stone. And we still don't know who Dallas is playing. Dallas could either play Vegas in the first round or they could play L.A. in the first round, and the other team will play against the Edmonton Oilers. So that's kind of what we're waiting on in the West here. But I hope, Joe Rexrode, we're finding out today when game one is. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I would think. I mean, do we have full series schedules for the East?
No.
Okay, I bet you we'll get all the full stuff tonight. Like, probably it might be late, but I bet you all the full schedules of all of them will be out tonight. That'd be my guess. That's usually how they do it.
So now that it's official, your initial impressions of the matchup, Joe, against the Vancouver Canucks. We were at practice yesterday, and obviously they've got some time this week, so they took Tuesday off. Practice yesterday. They're off again today. They're going to practice tomorrow, and then they're going to travel to Vancouver at some point, either Saturday. I guess Saturday would be when they travel to Vancouver. Your thoughts on the matchup for the Predators against the Canucks and some things you learned yesterday talking to the Preds in the Preds locker room?
Yeah, well, it was I'd say a spirited, lively practice yesterday, and it's an interesting kind of approach. So off and then full go, off, full go, and then it makes sense though. It's like you get just a real day of actual rest, like total rest, and then when you are working, try to work like you're, gearing up and not letting yourself get too rusty. So I think that's a good approach. And if it is Sunday, which I would assume it would be, then I think it'll end up being a good time period for the Preds, and then it'll end up being a good break. Like you said, they'll travel Saturday, and it is a long trip.
It is.
And then again, you expect the game Sunday. The matchup, I think it was Max Terz, talking about this. It is interesting that you've got a couple of Jack Adams finalists, I think, probably the winner on Vancouver. Got a couple Norris finalists, I would think. The winner probably on Vancouver.
Yep.
Some similarities between the teams. The matchup did not look good for the Preds when they played them, but I was listening to you guys on Hockey Insiders, or Preds insiders, not hockey.
We cover all of hockey.
We could just call it hockey insiders.
We could.
But and I thought, you made a good point. I mean, it's so long ago. It just doesn't mean much at all. Like, that's not what the Preds are. And look, Vancouver, teams change. So obviously a big thing for Vancouver, as they've kind of faltered a little bit late season, is that their goalie was hurt.
Right.
And so he's back, but it didn't look good. I was at that game at Bridgestone when Vancouver came in here and won. I guess it was in November. And, right at that point, Vancouver was the talk of the league. The Preds were not. The Preds have become the talk of the league, or one of the talks of the league. And it's just hard to, I think it's always, like you said, on Sports Insiders.
Thank you.
I think it's always World News Insiders. I think it's always kind of a bad idea, or it's not a great idea to draw too much from regular season results into the postseason. But I think especially in this case, because it was so long ago.
Well, it's totally different. I mean, you never know, like, when you factor in post or regular season series, like, who's coming in on back-to-backs, who's hurt at the time, what time of year was it? Like, there's so much that goes into it. Had they played 4 games in 6 nights? Had they not played for 5 days? Like, what does it all look like with the schedule? It's just totally different from a playoff series where you're locked in on one opponent and you're studying the tendencies of one opponent and you're trying to, kind of tailor your game towards beating them. And, that's why, I've seen, pretty much every example you want to throw out there, Joe. Let's say, the Predators swept the team in the regular season. I've seen them not play well in the playoffs against a team that they've played really well against in the regular season. So it's just a completely different thing when this time of year comes around here. And look, the Predators, Roman Josi was talking about this yesterday. They are a different team. I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, watch the way that they've played. Watch the production offensively that they put together in the second half of the season. He, I think, has elevated his game to an incredible level. Talking about Josi. And I am really interested to see how this shakes out here. I mean, Eddie Olczyk was on the TNT broadcast last night, and first thing he said about Vancouver Nashville was like, yep, I think that one's got a chance to go a long time. It could be a long series. And I agree. Like, I think this has a chance to be a really competitive series. I think the Predators have a chance to win it. Matter of fact, I mean, I'll just go ahead and tell you, I'm going to pick the Predators to win. I picked the Predators to win this series. I mean, I think this is clearly the better matchup for them than Dallas was. And I think they've got a real chance here. And look, Vancouver's really good. I mean, is it going to surprise me if Vancouver wins the series? Of course not. No. I mean, they're a really good team, and they've got the goalie. They've got a good, solid defense led by a great defenseman in Quinn Hughes. They've got forward group led by JT Miller, Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson that's really, really good. So Vancouver's a very good team. But I do think this is going to be a really interesting matchup, and I saw some of the reaction last night. Like, there are some loud Canucks fans who think that they basically just got a first-round bye. Now, there's also, to their credit, a lot of Canucks fans are like, hey, will you guys shut up? Like, the Predators are pretty good here. So I think there are 8 teams in the West, Joe, that are clearly good and are clearly playoff teams. It's worked out that way that all 8 of them made it. And I think we're in for some really intriguing series, really across the board in the first round. But this one is particularly in the Western Conference. But this one I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I am too. I think it's going to be really good. So we're making picks today. Was that what we're doing?
Oh, we don't have to, but I just kind of did it.
You just made one. All right. Well, I'll take Vancouver in 7.
Okay.
So there you go. But I'm definitely with that idea. I just will be surprised if this doesn't go at least 6. I think, if it's the Preds' way, that's quite surprising, and if it's Vancouver's way, 5 or less, that's a big disappointment. I mean, I think the Preds can absolutely go in there, hang with them, and win games and push this thing, and Nashville has a real chance here. I think, we talked a lot 2 years ago, and we weren't wrong about, this team, second half played great. And I mean, Carolina was really good, but they gave them 6, and they had a real chance, man. They had a chance at a couple of those games. So that was a good performance. But going into a series confidence. This is, well, I guess if you count the bubble, I guess if you count the bubble, this would be the most confident I would say that Preds fans should be that their team will prevail in a series since 2020.
Yeah, for sure. And, like I said, they're not the favorite. I mean, I've already seen the odds. I think on FanDuel, Vancouver's minus 150, Preds are plus 125. So, I mean, they weren't going to be the favorite regardless of who the matchup is going to be. But I think the sense I've gotten from most Preds fans that I've kind of interacted with the last couple of days is Vancouver was preferred to Dallas. And that's the other thing. We talked about the regular season, Joe, and somehow, sometimes those series don't really mean anything when it comes to playoff time. How many times have we guessed, like, this opponent is a better matchup for whoever, and then it ends up getting to the postseason and playing out the complete opposite way? Like, I remember, 2017 is the example we keep going back to that someday we're going to stop going back to. But Chicago, oh, God, Chicago, the Predators missed out on the Ducks. They could have played the Ducks, and then they swept Chicago, and it's like, oh, well, okay. I guess that worked out okay.
Yeah, they had a tougher time with the Ducks when they beat them in the Western Conference Finals.
They did.
And by the way, I said 22. I meant 21 on the Kane series. So 22 was they have no chance, and we were all right about that.
Yeah, there was that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. It is official. The Preds and Canucks coming up in round one. We'll take your thoughts on that. You'll hear from Predators defenseman Luke Schenn, who also played for Vancouver, by the way. Coming up next, a couple thoughts from him yesterday at practice. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Robby Stanley here, the NBA play-in tournament underway, and it gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason. So it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. Now, unfortunately, I was right about my Miami Heat. They had a 14-point lead and then blew it yesterday and lost to Philadelphia. So they'll take on Chicago, and the winner of that game gets the 8 seed in the East. I'm going with Miami in that one. I think they'll get it done at home, but you can take it any way you want to take it. All you got to do, go to FanDuel.com/Rob in order to get started. You can have the first basket score, 3-pointers made, and a whole lot more. Pretty much anything you want to get to is on FanDuel. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789. Tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Today is Vanderbilt Baseball takes on Florida. Pregame at 6:15, first pitch at 6:30. Vanderbilt Baseball brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. It is official. The Nashville Predators taking on the Vancouver Canucks in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Hopefully, we'll hear about a Game 1 date and time today. So looking forward to that, but it will be the Predators starting on the road against the Vancouver Canucks. They are practicing this week, so the Predators played Monday, had the day off Tuesday, pretty intense practice yesterday, the day off today, back practicing tomorrow before they travel out to Vancouver. And Predators defenseman Luke Schenn, caught up with him yesterday in the locker room. He played for the Vancouver Canucks as well, so some familiarity with those guys. Here was about a 4-minute conversation I had yesterday with Luke Schenn at Centennial Sportsplex.
So obviously you're very familiar with this time of year. As you've gone through your career, what have you found, both personally and as a team, is the best way to kind of handle this time of year and everything that comes with it, from the schedule, the distractions, all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the better off you are of, sort of almost putting the blinders on a little bit and not being distracted by, there's more headlines coming out just because there's not as many teams obviously in it, more people paying attention. So there's more storylines, and also more friends and family and people reaching out that typically maybe wouldn't. It's just that time of the year where everyone's kind of fired up for playoffs, and we're all like that as kids paying attention, and then now when you're in the moment, you understand kind of why people are like that, because we were all fans of it growing up too. So and then on top of that too, I guess on a personal level, playoffs, there's highs and lows. It's there's going to be games where there's tough losses. There's going to be games where there's emotional wins. You just don't want to get caught up in that too much. It's kind of, you always got to kind of find a way to flip the page and recover, take care of your body, and just really be mentally sharp throughout, and not get sidetracked and kind of on that roller coaster.
So in terms of just the style of play out there, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's hockey, but how much different is it come playoff time, the pace, everything involved with it?
Yeah, it's quite a bit different, especially the first round. It's like it's almost like March Madness a little bit off the start, where you're kind of teams are, there's 4 games a night and everyone's paying attention, but from a physical and emotional level, players are that much ramped up. You see, for the first, especially couple periods of the first game, it's like there's not even a puck out there sometimes. Guys are just running around and hammering each other, guys who sometimes typically don't. So, personally, I love this time of the year. It's this is why you play. It's funny how, as the season goes on, it weeds out a lot of, players who are getting looks and opportunities, and it kind of typically goes to more coaches that are experienced and veterans and guys who've kind of, been there throughout the course of the year. It's not so much, tryout or guys getting looks. It's for real. It's this is what you play for, and to me, this is what you look forward to.
The odds would tell you it's Vancouver that's the likely opponent. Could be Dallas, but
right.
What kind of stands out to you about the Canucks? And you haven't seen them in a while. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm familiar with a lot of those guys. Playing there the last couple of years. So if it is them, we'll start talking about sort of what they do and their tendencies, just like you would on any team in pre-scout. But yeah, I mean, they got a lot of talent. Both teams got a lot of talent. Both stands out. Both teams got really good goaltenders, big goalies, big decors, mobile decors, good power play, a lot of high-end skill and depth. So I mean, you really can't pick one or the other. They're both really good teams and have had outstanding years.
What's this week like? Not knowing who you're playing, not knowing where you're going to be, when you're going to start, but trying to stay ready for the playoffs when they come.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, at the end of the day, we know it's going to be one of 2 teams. We have a pretty good idea of, when the games are going to start within a day. So, I mean, it doesn't really change anything. It's just you want to be mentally sharp in practice, obviously, and feel physically ready and be smart about things, try to get your rest, recover, but yet also stay ready. I mean, you don't want to kind of take your foot off the gas and, just take a week off and go out there and go through the motions in practice and just say, we're just here, waiting or whatever. You want to stay sharp and stay ready, and it could be looked at as an advantage or a disadvantage to not be playing this week. So if we use our time the right way, then, we should be in a good spot.
That was Preds defenseman Luke Shen yesterday at Preds practice. Joe, it's interesting to hear players talk about like the first round part of this because, Shen talked about it there, and he's won 2 Stanley Cups with Tampa Bay. Obviously, McDonough has 2. O'Reilly's won a cup. But all the time, like, players talk about the first round and, like, how hard it is to get through the first round. He described it kind of as March Madness in terms of, for the first few games, first few shifts, it's like there's not even a puck out there. People just crashing and banging into each other. And to get through the first round of it is kind of it's the really, really difficult. I mean, I've heard, coaches talk about how the first round is the most difficult. He kind of highlighted the first round in terms of the pace of play being so much different than it is in the regular season. It's interesting to get that perspective because you'd think it would get harder as it goes, and I think it does from like an attrition standpoint. But when everybody's fresh and ready to go, like it's some fast-paced, intense hockey that we're getting ready to see.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, to me, like this series with Vancouver, you hope that just change in feel and just the intensity and the pressure, which of course is on Vancouver, you hope that really affects them because they don't have nearly the playoff experience the Preds do. So, I mean, that's where, but I think that's a really good way to, think back to, I know we keep going back to 2017, but as soon as the Preds, came right out, 2 shutouts in a row in Chicago, they win those games at home. Like from there, that team just seemed like a completely different team in terms of confidence. I mean, that wasn't the team that really we had seen all season in terms of, it was just like they knew they were going to win. They didn't win every night, but they knew they were going to win, And it's amazing how they took especially I just think those 2 games in Chicago.
Yeah.
I guess you could go back to the first game, go in there and kind of stun them in their building. And it's just like the confidence grew and they just absolutely ran with it. And again, plenty of teams have done that, but the first round can be very up for grabs. Very up for grabs. And again, I think that's where I think in the first round of these playoffs, it's nice to be the underdog. Like if you're the underdog like 2 years ago, no, because everybody knows you're probably just going to get waxed. But I think generally there's just a little bit of a psychological edge, and that's not independent to hockey. But I do feel like just like there's nothing like this tournament in terms of, like you said, Robbie, going through it, the attrition level.
Yeah.
I mean, teams that can keep their core healthy through like 3-4 rounds of this thing, that's incredible. And it happens sometimes, but usually even teams that win the cup, you go back through and there's 2 or 3 guys that have just been lost along the way,
Well, and even guys that are still playing are playing through some ridiculous stuff.
Exactly. Think about Ryan Ellis with a torn up knee, and he's still out there doing great things in the Stanley Cup final. 2017. Sorry, I keep referring to it. But I had a really good point too, and then I just ripped on myself. No, but I mean, there's nothing like this tournament. That's my point. But like again, you go to the NFL playoffs, and anything can happen in one game. I mean, these hockey games they're not football games, but they're very physical. I mean. And a 7-game series with the bitterness that builds between 2 teams. I mean, there's really nothing like it in sports. I mean, 7-game series in baseball and basketball. Basketball, can get like that too. It's physical and all that, but the potential for injury and just incredible aches and pains to make a run in this thing, I don't think people understand how intense it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Andrew Burnett, he said it again yesterday, and he said it a few times now. About starting on the road, how he likes that they're starting on the road because of the pressure that's on the home team in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, look, some of that is coach speak. My guess would be if the Predators were starting at home, we'd be like, well, it's a great advantage to start at home because we've got the crowd and all that stuff. But I used to think home ice mattered so much in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I still think at times it does. But just go look at the numbers. Go look at the numbers, especially the last 5 or 6 years. It's about dead even in terms of home ice record, road ice record in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I do think, especially early in the first round, you can create a lot of pressure on a team if you can go in there, especially in game one, and take a game and steal a game on the road and have an opportunity to go for two. That creates some immediate desperation from the home team, and the Predators are going to have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, look, it means okay. Go back to 2016. I mean, San Jose, that place was on fire, and you get a little thing going, like it got away from them. I do absolutely. 2017, the building was an asset for the Preds, but there no question that going into somebody else's building, I think is it's just yeah, and think about that run too. What they do, they went into St. Louis, got the first one. Into Chicago, got the first one. Went into Anaheim, got the first one. Went to Pittsburgh,
Did not.
might have got the first one, but there was an offsides call that took it away.
There was that.
A
very angry conversation from a certain coach to some officials after the game too. Yes.
Yes. So yeah, no, there is absolutely. I think especially coming out that first game, there was a ton of pressure. You just even get that first goal and have the home team chasing it, have Vancouver chasing it when already this is kind of new to a lot of them and stuff like that. I mean, it's an opportunity right out of the gate for the Preds.
So what do you make of the series? Preds taking on Vancouver in the first round. Do you think the Preds can win? Do you think the Predators will win? We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. That's coming up next, the best and worst things in sports at 6:45. Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words and PaulKowarski.com at 7 o'clock. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. Preds and Canucks in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Preds will start on the road. Taking your thoughts on that series, what sort of a chance do you give the Predators against Vancouver in round one? 615-737-1025, our phone number. Our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ryan in Nashville on the text line says the Preds can beat Vancouver if they play like they did during the 18-game point streak. If they go down by a goal or two in a game, Vancouver will shut it down like they have pretty much all season. They want you to chance them so they can send their skilled forwards on breakaways and on odd man rushes the other way. One thing that's really interesting to me, like Thatcher Demko, Joe, really good. He's a very good goalie. Hadn't played a lot lately. So how sharp is he going to be once the playoffs come around? Is it just, right back into the thick of things and no big deal, and he's the Thatcher Demko that we've come to know that's really, really, really good? Or does it take him 4 or 5 games to get going? Because if it takes him 4 or 5 games to get going, that's a pretty darn good news for the Predators at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm no hockey strategist, but I'd say get some pucks on the net.
Yes.
Right? Test them. I guess you could also say, the one thing goalies hate is not having steady work. So, there's always that too. But
let's get 5 shots per period and then make sure they're good shots.
Yeah, just make sure 2 or 3 go in and you're home free. But obviously they're a different team without him. It was pretty clear that they were, saving him to have him ready for the playoffs. They got him geared up a little bit here at the end, but. He's
going to play it again tonight, too, by the way, at least for a little while, according to Rick Tocchet yesterday.
Yeah, which makes sense. So, but, look, do matchups, and it's not a matchup per se. They're not matching up with each other, but the Preds should have – he's really good. But, like, the top level of Saros, that's what the Preds need, and that if they get it, then they have the edge to me.
Austin from Clarksville asked, what would be more demoralizing for Vancouver – Preds blowing them out in game 1 or the Preds coming back from down 2 or 3 goals? I think just winning the game would be demoralizing enough. I mean,
yeah, any loss probably. I mean, I guess if I'm having to choose between those two, if somehow you're up 3, the shakiest lead in hockey. If you're up 3 goals and you lose that and lose the game, that'd be pretty demoralizing.
It would be.
I must say. I would advise the Preds to try to engineer that kind of a win, but any sort of loss would be tough. I mean, it's there's pressure immediately. Someone was asking Shen, and Shen was really good. Well, we played earlier. Shen is really good, media darling that he is. But someone was asking him too about, and it might have been Jim Diamond about, or maybe John Glennon. Luke, if Trey Avery were in game 1, but
your
just
thoughts
about
on the city of Detroit.
Yeah, Glennon's making Little Caesars jokes on me yesterday. Just asking about just the that whole thing, the pressure thing, for the home team, and he, his general answer was, basically he's seen all of it. He's seen being down a series, losing at home, winning on the road, winning. I mean, it's just basically kind of what he said. Whatever it is, whatever happens, can you have that mental fortitude to just come back for the next game?
Right.
Because so many of these series are roller coasters, and they look like they're trending one way, and then one big period, one big goal changes the series too.
Well, that's where I'm interested to see. I do think sometimes we make a little bit too much a playoff experience. But I think situations like that is when it matters, right? Like if you're Vancouver and you drop the first game, can you avoid just totally panicking? That's part of what this year is about. Can you avoid just totally getting swept up in victory, or can you avoid just total panic if you lose a game? And we've seen young teams before not handle the ups and downs of the playoffs particularly well. Now, look, on the other side of that, I've seen some young teams handle it really well before. I remember back in 2009 when Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane kind of got in the playoffs and made their deep run for the first time. They got to the West Final, I think, And, I mean, those guys handled it really well. And then the next year they went out and won the Stanley Cup. So, like, sometimes you just run into groups that are really good and they're able to handle things like that. But sometimes they're not. And I think if you're the Predators, especially if you could get that game 1 win, that's where, like, the playoff experience comes into play of, okay, now Vancouver's down. How are they going to handle that?
Right. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you'd love to put him in that position. And, since I'm getting good-natured crap for continually going back to the 2017 team, a lot of things bring to mind my Red Wings, fandom going back to my childhood. And, like, Stevie Y and those guys early on made a real surprise run to the conference finals to play, I think it was in 87, to play Edmonton, and it was like, but then they had years of playoff, disappointment before they I think there was some learning and stuff like that, but also, like, it's like you said, you can go find examples of teams that they were just good and they got hot. I mean, when the Preds made their run in 2017, anybody on that team? I don't think so, right? I mean, no. I mean, Pekka had actually, in fact, my consciousness of Pekka really was that Vancouver series of 11, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that right? 2011? Yeah.
He was great.
So him, but I don't think anybody else really, right? Any of the grizzled vets there that had done something earlier? Maybe. Did Vern have some success?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, PK
Yeah.
had played a little bit in the playoffs, but
Yeah.
I mean, there was not a ton of experience on that team.
Yeah, and so they're going against not only the 1 seed, the favorite, but also a team that had everything, including reams and reams of experience by then. So but yeah, this is where you do hope that maybe handling the difference. It is just different out there in the first game. Using that as an advantage, getting a win, and then really applying the pressure. And so some of those guys facing that for the first time, that's the to me the blueprint for the Preds to really have a shot here.
James on the text line says, my worry is that we'll continue to start slow. You can't do that against really good teams. And that one to me, Joe, is kind of highlighted by the break here. I mean, regardless of if it's, I think we could probably rule out Saturday at this point. So regardless of if it starts Sunday or if it starts Monday, whenever it is, at this point, the Preds will have been off for a pretty significant amount of time at that point. So how quickly can you get rolling out of the gate? Like, it's interesting because, like, everybody, game 1 of the playoffs, like, everybody's adrenaline level is going to be through the roof. Everybody's going to be ready to go. Like, you're not going to have to worry about, not having energy and not being ready to go. Sometimes I think it actually goes like you have too much. Like, you have too much energy and you can't make simple passes and execute.
Right.
Like, I'm not worried about the energy level. I'm worried about, if I'm a Predators fan, like, what's the execution level look like? Does it take them 2 periods to be able to execute with the puck? Because that to me is the most important thing. I think in the playoffs, for the most part, I'm not saying that teams never come out flat in the playoffs, because it does happen from time to time, but really it's about execution. Like, can you come out and make the plays you need to make? Can you make the right reads? Can you avoid, making some dumb mistakes in terms of trying to do too much? Like, those things are what really matter in the playoffs. And with having basically a week off at that point from a game setting, can the Predators' execution level with the puck remain at a high level?
Yeah. And to James' point, I think even apart from the break and everything and the difference in playoff hockey, it has been, I think lately there have been a lot of bad first periods.
Yeah.
Obviously the last game, that's a desperate team and they punch him in the mouth. But I just feel like it feels like they've had to get to the second period to really find their game in a lot of games. So if they can change that, that would very much help them. That really, you just don't want to be chasing games consistently, at all, period. But like in a postseason series too. So that is it's a very valid, I think, concern that to get to what they like to do and their execution earlier.
My advice to Preds fans, Joe, go ahead and start getting your naps in now, because my guess is you're going to see a lot of late puck drops out there. And I would not be surprised, Joe, if there were a couple of maybe 8:30, 8:45 puck drops here in Nashville. It's going to be fun. Looking forward to it.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, that is, and I get it because obviously you have a television audience on Pacific time.
Yep.
But you know what? I mean, those people can't get in front of their TVs by 5:30 local time for a 7:30 puck drop here.
I'm with you. And I
Oh,
mean, a couple of these games are going
dreading
like
it.
double or triple overtime. I mean, it's got overtime written all over it, baby. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Let's bring it into the 1 a.m. We'll just go right to the studio.
That's right. Coming up next, it's time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
The best and worst of the sports week. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
This is the worst.
You look like you're feeling sorry for yourself. Believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
He's one of one. He is him.
This is a Coke bottle. It's not a crystal ball.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Okay, let's go.
It is time for the best and worst things in sports. We'll take your best things, your worst things on our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Joe Rexrode, kick us off with your best and worst things in the world of sports.
Sometimes I feel bad that you guys let me go first, but if you're going to let me go first, I want best of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, the thing is, I could have saved this for next week after they started, but whatever. I mean, the excitement level is super high, and I think this building, Bridgestone Arena, is going to be, is going to be at a very high level because this team has brought that out of the fans. I think there's a very excited fan base again for the Nashville Predators in the postseason. But in general, it's just, it's like I always say, like, March Madness is that's to me like my favorite, like, American event. But man, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and of course it's not just an American event. The Stanley Cup playoffs is
it's Canadians haven't won a cup since '93.
Fair point. Maybe the Canucks are the team to do it.
Maybe so.
But it's incredibly special. So, I mean, that's just a slam dunk. My worst in sports is the end of the Golden State Warriors dynasty. I think it's nice that Steve Kerr and those guys after the game kind of gave a vote of confidence to Klay Thompson and they won him back. But, Klay Thompson is not Klay Thompson anymore, and anyone who would pay him a lot right now, I think, would be out of their minds. So I don't see it staying the same. I just don't know what they can do. Maybe they can. Steph Curry's still great. Draymond Green's still great. They have some good pieces, but the Western Conference has moved on, which is sad. But my Dubs got 4. They got dynasty locked in, and I will always remember the good times.
Better dynasty, the Dubs in your heart. The Dubs or the Pistons of the 80s?
Well, I mean, the Pistons only won the 2, so that's a lot of people would dispute that being a dynasty. I'm
really just trying to get at the root of your heart here.
Well, there's nothing. Yeah, there's no sports team I'll ever love more than the Bad Boys Pistons. So, but I very much loved this team, and I nothing. Few things tick me off more than hearing people complain about like the NBA and stuff. Like, I don't know, imagine Golden State Warriors basketball, and it's not just them, but just basketball in that league is absolutely fantastic to watch now. I don't know what the hell people are doing. Anybody who says that to me, I can't take seriously that they give a crap about basketball as a sport.
Nick Keyser, your best
Don't
and
get
worst
me
things
started
in the world of sports.
I'm going to start off with a really cool ending to someone's career last night, that being Jeff Carter. I remember watching him play with the Los Angeles Kings when they went on their runs, and last night he got the score in his final game, and he admitted that it was his last game afterwards as well. Pretty obvious to see him play the way that he did last night with the Penguins, but yeah, I thought that was cool that they kind of let him have his moment to himself, and he walked off the ice for the last time with his kids. So a very cool moment for him. I noticed that last night before I went to sleep. And then worse in sports, sticking in hockey, pretty simple. Coyotes, man. Last game in Arizona. I don't know if we're going to see hockey ever again in Arizona, especially not under the same ownership. That's for damn sure. That was embarrassing for how they handled it. More importantly, I think it's cool to see that, Josh Doan got to actually play with that franchise before they moved, and he scored a lot of good goals so far early and often, but also I think it's just a tragic way for things to end for hockey in Arizona right now. Will they get it back? That's the biggest question. The 5-year window looks like it could possibly be okay, but I don't think it's going to be done in that long of time, but that just sucks. I mean, that entire broadcast was sad to watch, and just an absolute tragic ending for them, for sure.
My best thing in sports, Scotty Scheffler winning the Masters, his second Masters win. It was a dominant performance. And look, I don't know this for sure. I don't think we're ever going to see like a Tiger Woods like run in the sport of golf ever again. Like there's too many good players. Nobody's as great as Tiger was like in his prime. But like if you go back and watch like what Scheffler's done over the last couple of years, I mean the dude's pretty dominant. I mean if he's not winning, he's finishing in the top 5 like pretty much all the time in the tournament. So another Masters win for him. He's incredible ball striker, and he's putting really well right now. So it was fun to watch Scotty Scheffler bring home another Masters. My worst thing in sports, Jonte Porter getting a lifetime ban from the NBA for betting on the sport. And
that's a good one.
Good on the NBA for coming down strong on this one. I mean, if you kind of read what's going on here with Porter, I mean, basically throwing games out there. So when you get information that that's the case, we knew, and Joe, we talked about this, when the sports books and when gambling became more public and more widely accepted, especially in the world of sports, figured something like this would happen at some point. But Jonte Porter, a lifetime ban from the NBA.
Yeah, and look, you hope that these things work as cautionary tales, and it appears like some of these parlays basically like hitting the under with poor play is what is alleged. I mean, that's got to be you got to be gone, and that's like anybody betting against themselves, like Pete Rose that he bet against the red, can't have it at all. Like you said, you figured something like this would happen. You hope that these things coming to light, and we've had a few things in the last couple of years, will end up making it good that it is so out in the open. I mean, look, that's the best we're gonna do, because it's not going away.
Yeah, no question about that. Keith from Bowling Green on the text line says, "Thank goodness Arizona is moving, so maybe the Predators can beat Utah. Get them out of Arizona. Maybe the Predators can go on the road and win against that team." William from Madison says, "The best is Jack Leiter making his MLB debut against Joe's Tigers today.
I didn't know that. That's nice.
And it is nice. Worst is when Vanderbilt baseball plays Texas A&M in College Station. Did not go well for Vanderbilt baseball against Texas A&M.
No, it did not at all. They need a big bounce back there. Huge one, Tennessee, Kentucky, too, by the way.
Yeah.
I like Jared from Spring Hill. This isn't best words, but he says, because of your all's coverage of the Preds and NHL, I've sought it out more and have come to appreciate the game. Still green, but the contact, passion, skill of play makes me appreciate it more than the NFL. Wow.
Wow.
Hey, seek it out. That's awesome to hear, and seek it out live as much as you can.
Well, and beyond that, if you've never watched playoff hockey, there's nothing better than that. Like a playoff hockey is about as good as it gets.
If you're liking this, watch every playoff hockey game you can possibly watch.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words and PaulKuharski.com. We'll get hot and heavy into the Titans and the NFL draft with him. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Thursday morning. 1 week away from the NFL Draft. Hallelujah. We've almost made it. And to help us talk about that, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our buddy Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words and from PaulKuharski.com. Zach, good morning. How are you?
Doing great. Ready to talk about the Titans trading up to second overall to draft Drake May. I'm ready.
We're ready to have that discussion
Yes.
too, baby. Let's get in there. Trade all the picks. Get up there.
I mean, that's the big discussion of the week on this station. So let's just dive right in. Titans need to trade the farm for Drake May, even though they have a quarterback and have 10 gazillion holes on this roster.
There is that. Speaking of holes they have on the roster, Zach, I want to start with one that, quite frankly, we've not spent a ton of time talking about, and I think is kind of on the back burner for a lot of Titans fans, but could end up being pretty important for this group. What are they going to do at inside linebacker? How do you view like the hole that they have at inside linebacker and how they go about filling that in the draft?
Look, the worst thing they can do is reach for a guy at 38 that they're not completely sold on, because you never want to draft for need. It doesn't take a professor to figure that out. But on day 3, or even if they get a pick in the 3rd round, day 3 has some really great linebacking options. Edofon Ulofoshio, Jordan McGee are 2 guys that I have really high on my list that I think can come in, wear the green dot, give you some oomph to that room, give you some leadership, and allow Kenneth Murray to do what he does, and that's be human torpedo and see ball, get ball kind of linebacker. And so they don't have an option in free agency. They don't have an option of Kenneth Murray, truly a true option in that locker room. They have to find one in this draft because that is the process. The offseason process has led them to that. And so day 3 is where you find the value. But if you're to trade back in round 2 or pick up an extra second or a third along the way and Junior Colson is there, that's the guy. He's been in an defense that is a pro-style defense with the best defense in the country. He's a guy that was voted on by his teammates to be the defensive MVP on the best defense in the country. And he is a guy that has experience in a Ravens-like pro-style system because that's where Mike McDonald came from, and that's the system they carried over in Michigan.
All right, let's get right to offensive tackle. I just need to I need to understand, Zach, where you are. Are you the leader of the alt haters? I call them the halters.
I prefer to say that I live a Joe alternate lifestyle.
Oh boy.
Nice. But we had it's just been a really interesting discussion. I think we've kind of come down to, look, he's not like this overwhelming best prospect in X number of years kind of guy, but he is the best this year. But you don't think that there's a lot of guys. How many guys would you put in his tier, and who would they be?
Really, I would just put myself personally, just put Olu Fashanu in that tier. And that was the tier originally everybody had heading in to this. So I don't understand why it all changed. There's nothing that shows up on tape that says it. Really gets his hands in a place that the hand size doesn't matter. If he's the center and then snapping the ball and then trying to do something, that's a little bit different before tackle. Hand size doesn't really matter. And look, it doesn't take a professor to figure it out that Joe Alt is OT1. I fully agree. But Olu Fashanu is like your OT1B or OT2, which is really close. And if you look, I think people get wrapped up in these big boards where they see Joe Alt is number 5 and then Olu Fashanu is like number 10 or number 13. Well, if you go to – I think what people need to understand is that there's decimal points or single points that separate all these offensive linemen. If you look at CBS Sports, Matt Miller, Lance Zierlein, Brandon Thorne, and 33rd big boards, they have actual grades. And what separates Olu Fashanu and Joe Alt is 2 points, 0.16 points, 0.04 points, 0.01 points, 0.02 points. The problem is that there's just other positions and players that grade out just a tad bit better that fit in that range between Alt and Fashanu. And And in all honesty, Fashanu's a franchise left tackle. Joe Alt is a franchise left tackle. They could both go to Pro Bowls. They could both go to All-Pros. But I think a quote that perfectly describes why I kind of feel like, yes, Joe Alt is a good, safe pick. But if he's not there, it's not the apocalypse or anything. A dark storm cloud won't eternally loom over St. Thomas Sports Park. Or if they decide to trade back and, like, they go a little bit rogue in the draft room and, take a gambit and trade back, even with Joe Alt on the board, and they somehow lose out on that. It's not a big deal because you've seen this quote's from Bob McGinn's article from Anonymous Scout. I've seen a lot of tackles over the years. I think we're good, if not better than him. But if you look over the last number of years, there are not many great ones. He'll be maybe a Pro Bowl left tackle, but I don't think he'll be an all-pro guy because he's just going to have some innate issues the way he's built because he's too tall. I'm okay with a Pro Bowl left tackle. This team could use a Pro Bowl left tackle. It hasn't had one in ages. But I think people are overinflating what Joe Alt actually is compared to Olu Fashanu, and I think Olu Fashanu is the closest guy to Joe Alt, so it's better to have a pick plus Olu Fashanu than it is to have Joe Alt if he's not there or whatever. I mean, I just don't think the separation is as big as what people love to make it out to be.
Would you have a problem with Olu at 7?
At the end of the day, if Joe Alt is gone, like if it goes 3 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, and Joe Alt, I would not have a problem with Olu Fashanu, but I still prefer a trade back. But it takes 2 to tango. So if you can't trade back with anybody, I'm taking Olu Fashanu. And it hurts me to say this because I love Roma Dunze. Over Roma Dunze, I'm taking Olu Fashanu over any of the other defensive or offensive players outside of Malik Neighbors and Joe Alt. That's just where I'm at with that.
Zach Lyons with us here on Robby and Rexrode. Zach, how do you view Dallas Turner as to what type of NFL player he's going to be?
I like to call him because I heard your all's discussion with Caroline on yesterday's show, and I like to call him a purple chip player, and that is a red chip player with blue chip traits, and it's up to the coaching staff and him in part two to reach that blue chip status. And my partner over at stackandinbox.com, Stoney Keeley, has him as a blue chip player, so we differ a little bit there. So the Titans have a need. So if they do trade back and there's a little bit of havoc that happens in between, where they trade back to and everything, but Dallas Turner's still there, he's a beast. So I wouldn't be opposed to it and then taking a tackle in the second round, but things are going to have to fall so weirdly for the Tennessee Titans to go Dallas Turner at 7 or go Dallas Turner even in a trade back. I kind of put it this way. I would understand if they drafted Dallas Turner at 7, but I wouldn't be pleased. Like I get it, but I'm not really excited.
Okay, so last year you fell in love with Puka Nacua. You put him on your fantasy team. You prospered. Who is your Puka Nacua, or who are your Puka Nacuas for this draft, Zach?
It took a while for me to find a Puka Nacua. We went down to the Pro Bowl. I was really hoping for Jacob Cowing because that's where Puka Nacua really shined, was the Pro Bowl last year. And we went down, and I was hoping it was going to be Jacob Cowing, and he didn't really deliver the way I wanted him to deliver. And then I started watching the film, getting into my wide receivers and looking at that, and I came across Malik Washington out of Virginia, who could go in the 4th round, who reminds me personally a lot of Zay Flowers. And as you know, Zay Flowers was a first-round draft pick last year. Now this year's wide receiver class is totally different. But if you're looking for like a Josh Downs or a Zay Flowers, a smaller physical guy that you could put outside, as a wide receiver too, that can kind of go deep, but you got to find ways to get him the ball. He's a guy that mainly fits the slot mold that is. He was the Virginia offense. I mean, there are teams that try to double him in games, and he's a slot receiver. He's like a 5'10", 5'9" guy, and people are trying to double him because he is the offense. They found creative ways to get him the ball. He was really, really good. He ranks really highly in all of the metrics that you're looking for. And I'll tell you, I like Ricky Pearsall at number 2. I think he's a guy that can play inside and outside. I don't think he's getting enough love. I think Ladd McConkey's still in way too much shine from Ricky Pearsall. I think Ricky Pearsall could be a faster Cooper Kupp coming out of college, and I think he gives you everything you need. He can catch a ball behind him, in front of him, side to side, up, down. It doesn't matter. He's catching the ball whenever you throw it to him. And listen, I know he has a lot of issues. If this team and this staff is as good as they claim to be in wanting to develop talent and all this stuff, and Jermaine Burton is still there in round 4, or even if you get a third-round pick and a trade back, Jermaine Burton is the top 3 wide receiver in this class if he didn't have off-field concerns, coaching concerns, and attitude concerns. But that guy is good. And if you have true control over your locker room and know that you can bring him in and he can learn not only from and I'm blanking on the wide receivers coach's name, but he's a really good wide receiver, Tyke Tolbert. And he can learn from DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. I don't see why you don't take a chance in the 4th round on one of the best wide receiver prospects in this class.
Zach, great stuff as always, buddy. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us, and thank God we're 1 week away from the NFL draft. We're getting close, my friend.
It cannot come here quick enough. I'm so exhausted.
I'm with you. Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right, thanks.
Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words, contributor at paulkuharsky.com as well. We'll react to what he had to say, take more of your thoughts on the Titans and the NFL draft. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Hey, folks, Joe Rexrode here inviting you to bet the NBA Play-In Tournament with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel Sportsbook. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel or if you have an account already. You're going to get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay doesn't win. And, of course, here we are. We're getting down to it here with these play-ins. How about the Bulls now getting a shot with the Heat? Kobe White with 42. And I will say I was wrong on the Heat Sixers, but I'm going to continue to play the Heat. I'm also going to after what he did for the Bulls, I'm going to say over on points for Kobe White. NBA same game parlay is the perfect way to combine your bets, of course, for a chance to score a bigger payday. However you want to play, go to FanDuel.com/Joe102. Bet the NBA with a no sweat same game parlay. That's FanDuel.com/Joe102. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older, present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued is now withdrawable bonus bets. Expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbet.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Appreciate Zach Lyons for being with us in the last segment. So, Joe, pretty clearly, Zach doesn't believe there's a huge difference between Joe Alt and certainly Olu Fashanu. What do you make of kind of that discussion? And do you think that as the draft process is going on here, that maybe Titans fans, the media, everybody involved, when we're so Joe Alt, are we overinflating the player that Joe Alt actually is heading into this draft?
Well, I don't think we are, because I think we've tried to attack it from every angle and get down to the nitty gritty. And Zach mentioned Bob McGinn, who, I mean, he's covered the NFL forever, and he, for the Go Long site, which is Tyler Dunn's site. I mean, they go long, man. They got some, they got some in-depth stuff. So I know he had some stuff that raised some eyebrows. Last year, I remember as well. I'm trying to think last year if it was I guess it was Stroud related, which was very wrong, and it wasn't the S2, but it was just some Stroud. I think if I'm remembering right, but anyway, he has interesting stuff. He has some sources in the league who are scouts who tell him very frank stuff. And again, I think that's a good way to put it. There have been tackles that have been better than him. He's not like this absolute, oh my gosh, contender for a top spot in some years tackle. We see that. We see left tackles go first sometimes, or real close to it. He's not that guy. Again, it's like the question of, what is he compared to just this class? That's what matters. You're drafting this year, and how important is it to get him? If you can't get him, how much of a drop off is there? If you go somewhere else other than tackle with your first pick, that to me triggers need as a bigger consideration for your second pick. So how's the tackle situation looking there? A lot of teams in this draft need tackles, but I think we've figured out, Joe Alt is really good. He could be a Pro Bowl player. I think it would be a really good pick for the Titans if they can get him at 7. It's kind of boring because we've talked about it so much. If it gets to that, it's going to be anticlimactic next Thursday, right?
Yep.
Joe Alt. Joe Alt,
all
just
right,
like we all said. But I still think that's – I guess I don't know if I want to say best case scenario, because maybe something crazy happens and Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to you. Okay, well, or Drake May. But but I think that's a really good scenario if the Titans can get Alt.
I think it is too. I do wonder, if we've maybe, depending on who you talk to, overestimated the difference in between him and other prospects, right, and other tackles specifically. And I don't know. I think when you look at the measurables, when you look at, we had Dan Brugler on this week. He was talking about the 3-cone drill. There's a lot to like about Joe Alt. So if that's the way the Titans go at number 7, I agree with you, it would be anticlimactic. And, in some ways, when teams draft offensive linemen rather than quarterbacks or receivers or playmakers that way, it's a different reaction from the fan base than it is when you draft, the quote-unquote more exciting positions. Everybody who's a Titans fan knows that they need the left tackle and they need to find a way to protect Will Levis. So I don't think anybody's going to have a problem if that's the way they go. I just, the expectations on him are going to be really high, as they should be, if you're picking somebody at number 7 overall. And what type of player is he going to be? Is he going to be that cornerstone player? Is he going to be the franchise player, franchise left tackle that's consistently year in, year out competing for a Pro Bowl spot, All-Pro spot? Is that what he is at the NFL level?
Yeah, and how much better can he get? He's obviously the most ready, but how much better can he get? Right. I don't get the sense that he's pushed right up against his ceiling, but it's just that's one of those things that people just don't know, because you just don't know what someone's going to do once they get in the NFL. Interesting that Zach said that he would take Olu. I mean, there's definitely some people who would say that's just a need reach to go Olu there, even if there's not a huge gap, even if there's some gap, and again, that varies by analyst on that. But I mean, I'm a little hesitant. I'd be hesitant to agree with that. I don't know. It'd be a really interesting situation, you know. And it comes down to, obviously, I mean, again, I think that the Bill Callahan factor should be key here. But if you had a shot at an Odunze, like, to me, I would go Odunze over Olu at that spot. Dallas Turner or Olu. I'd probably go Olu. Again, if you can't get out of 7 and you have to stick and pick at 7, I think I'd probably go Olu over Dallas Turner. But I just, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm underselling Dallas Turner.
So let me ask you this. Would you go Odunze over Alt? Would you go Neighbors over Alt? Would you take Alt over both of them? How do you view that part of it?
I'd probably, I think I'd go Alt. But this is where I don't have a big board. I don't know. I don't know, Robbie. But they know.
We'll work on that this weekend. Get you a big board.
Yeah, actually, I do have to. Well, I do have to, like, I am going to be writing up a Titans big board, like possibilities in every round.
Oh boy.
Yes, very exciting. But it really, to me, that's where they have to trust theirs. You know what I mean? Like, they just trust theirs.
Yeah.
Now, if it's just a fractional difference, you know, and it's like Dunze and Alt, and and you have a Dunze rated as a better player, but it's really close, and I still might go Alt because you can't just completely ignore need, can you?
No, I think when it's close,
if it's
that's
clear
when
in your mind. Yeah, the need has to be a tiebreaker or whatever, or at least be a factor. But yeah, like if they have a Dunze clearly, and I think a Dunze is going to be a star.
I do.
If they have just clearly he's a better prospect than Joe Alt, then that's what you do. But then you've got to. You got to hope. That's the thing. I mean, some of your strategy from there is hope that someone you still like is at tackle at 38.
Exactly. And everybody keeps talking about Patrick Paul. And what if he's gone? Like, what if there's a big run on tackle at the end of the first round into the second round? What do you do at that point if you're the Titans? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. A question on the receivers in this draft that we'll address coming up next. Take your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Omaha Storm Chasers at First Horizon Park. Pregame at 6:20, first pitch 6:35, with coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by Chuck McDowell and Medical House Calls, Middle Tennessee's best medical care in the comfort and safety of your own home. For more information, go to medicalhousecalls.com. Medical House Calls, where the nearest clinic is your home. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. We're taking your thoughts on the NFL Draft, which, by the way, is 1 week from today. We'll have Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports joining the program at 8 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on all things Titans and NFL Draft heading into that. So looking forward to that. Joe West in Clarksville on the text line asking the question, if they draft one of those top receivers, how would that work, having Ridley and Hopkins on the team already? We discussed this at the end of the show yesterday with Paul Kuharsky in terms of, I fully believe they are not set at wide receiver. I know they've signed Calvin Ridley. To me, that doesn't mean that they need to be done at wide receiver. And I agree with Paul from the standpoint of, like, at some point you got to find your young wide receiver that's a stud that you can start to build around. It doesn't necessarily have to be at pick 7, but I think wide receiver and the talent that's going to be on the board in the first round, in the second round, third round, fourth round, it's a deep wide receiver class this year. I think that needs to be of heavy consideration for the Tennessee Titans. D-Mace yesterday, Joe, on Caroline Willie and D-Mace, did not seem to have much of an appetite for the Titans drafting a wide receiver based on the other needs that they have on the roster and what they've already done to this point. So what do you make of what Wes had to say of drafting those top receivers, how that works with having Ridley and Hopkins on the team already?
Yeah, well, right now Hopkins on the team for one more year. And Ridley is he 28 or 29?
He's 29.
Yeah. So 29 at receiver is not 29 at running back, but it's also not 29 at quarterback. It's, I mean, like, you should have, hopefully the duration of his contract, he'll be good. But yeah, you absolutely, we had a question on Jared versus Joe yesterday, Jared's fake win. I mean, I get it. Carolina's got to give him some wins sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what the reasoning was, but we had the question of, rank the needs. And I said this yesterday on our show. I don't put receiver high. Needs to me when you're doing that, like, there are positions that if the Titans don't address them, like where their roster is right now, they will be like a non-functioning NFL team next year. Okay, in the fall, like if they don't get a linebacker, if they don't get another, edge and or interior defensive lineman, if they don't get a left tackle, like, they're not going to be able to function. They are fine at receiver. So I don't put receiver need if you're doing it that way, that high. But you got a chance to have a great one. Yes, do that. And even if they don't have a top of the draft selection here with one of those guys, Neighbors or a Dunze, I mean, if they address tackle and at 38 they can get one of these receivers, yes, do that. If that guy's high on your board. I mean, quickly, Hopkins is going to be out of here. I actually agree with one thing Jared said yesterday, which I think they should try to see if he'll extend a year.
Yeah.
Going into this year. But again, it's still not long term. So you have Will Levis. You're hoping Will Levis is your quarterback in 2034 too. Who knows? By 2034, we may be talking about, oh yeah, remember Will Levis back a decade ago? But one way to really help him, protect him, but also get him a receiver he can grow with as a guy who's, a year behind him as a rookie. That would be a great thing for the Titans.
Well, and look, I agree with you that the receiver room is fine if they don't address it anywhere else. I don't know that it's good, but it's fine. But one guy goes down, Ridley or Hopkins goes down, and it's not fine. Like, it's not fine at all if one of those guys goes down. So, I mean, I do think you've got to factor that into it as well. Look, I'm totally with you. Like, they need another edge rusher. Certainly they need a left tackle. It's the biggest need on the team. They need another inside linebacker. Could they get by without drafting another receiver? Yes. But I also think that's where some of the best talent is in this draft. So if you're being true to your board, it's hard for me to believe that by the time you get, maybe not to your first round, but probably in your second round, and again, this would be another great scenario to have a third-round pick. It's hard for me to believe that there's not going to be a scenario that comes up in either the first or second round this year, Joe, where the best player on the board is probably a wide receiver. And the question is, do you take him if you're the Titans? It again comes back to if it's close, need probably is the tiebreaker there. But, it's a wide receiver loaded draft. Now, I what's interesting, and I go back to what Dane Brugler said earlier this week on our show, there have been a lot of really good wide receiver drafts lately, right? And it does feel like the athletes coming up playing in college football, if you're not going to be a quarterback and you're, equipped to play on the offensive side of the ball, you're probably going to receiver. Like that's what the athletes are doing now, and they're not doing that at running back as much.
Right. I mean, you could also go cornerback, but
sure.
Yeah, it's anything but running back. A, B, RB, anything but running back. Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be running backs. Very sad. Very sad.
It
but
is.
Yeah, and I think he's right. Like, I think a couple things. One thing he didn't mention, we've talked about before. Yeah, there's more talent going there, but also offenses have flowed up from college to the NFL a lot more than they used to. So it really did used to be like you draft a receiver in the first round and like the rookie year might be rough. It was kind of like it was almost like quarterbacks, back then it was like you give a quarterback 2-3 years and you give a receiver 1 year. Now it's like, come right in, you're starting, let's go. It's very different.
Yeah.
John in Nashville asked about star tight end, better option. Well, that's another thing Brugler said to us, and I thought he made some great points about Brock Bowers, which is, if Brock Bowers is utilized well and he is used as basically more than a tight end, then you enhance also what that would be. I'm fascinated by Brock Bowers, and honestly, I've kind of gone in circles on him.
Yeah.
But I still feel like if the Titans somehow ended up with him, they'd probably be real happy about it for many years.
Yep.
I think whoever gets him probably will be. Great point by Fitz. I think we've talked about this too, but to always bring it up, look at the 4 teams, the last 4 teams. Maybe it's just an anomaly, but the last 4 teams, Chiefs, Niners,
the Lions.
Yes, whatchamacallits, this team right here, and Ravens, Andrews, Laporta, Kelsey, Kittle.
Pretty good tight ends.
Pretty good.
Let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, buddy. Hey, I got a couple things. Joe, you won Jared versus Joe. I don't think you've ever lost a Jared versus Joe, honestly. But
you're right.
Caroline picks, and she's one of 3 people in the world that can stand Jared, his parents being the other 2. She should not be voting.
Wow.
For who wins this thing. It should be a fan thing. Like, absolutely, somebody who doesn't work there should vote for that. But
I like the way you're thinking.
Yep.
That's not my point. So my point, dude, this tackle class coming out, I feel like we're really overthinking it. And we get like this because we're so bored and, like, nothing's changed, but, like, everybody has a new opinion every week. The Laramie Tunsil mask is what I think of, like, for some – it didn't change how he is as a football prospect or a player. It's like somebody dug up something on him, So I still think, like, if you take all distractions aside, we need a very boring vanilla pick here, man, and just let it be a tackle. And then probably the next 2 or 3 rounds that we get picked in too, man. Like, I want it to be all focused on people who can block. Even if you get a tight end, a decent tight end with some upside in like round 3 or something, whatever, dude, I would take that too. But I want people who can keep my quarterback upright.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Adam. Going to be an interesting discussion that will continue right up until the draft. We'll get more into the Titans, the draft with Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports coming up at 8 o'clock. Coming up next, it is time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. We'll do that next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hey, Robby Stanley here. The NBA play-in tournament underway. It gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason, so it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs. My beloved Miami Heat in a win-or-go-home situation on Friday coming up in the NBA play-in tournament against the Bulls. I'm going to go with the Heat. I think they win at home and they become the 8th seed in the East, but you could take it however you want to take it. You could bet on three-pointers made, first basket scorer, over-under. They got you covered on anything you need on FanDuel Sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/Rob in order to get started. Once again, that's FanDuel.com/Rob. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Glorious, till I'm victorious. It's so stupid. It's a terrible song.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joe Rexrode's Rant of the Day. Been a while since we heard Joe singing Glorious. Playoff time. Glad to hear it. Joe, the floor is yours.
Speaking of that, I feel like I haven't heard Glorious much. Glorious domination. Have you?
I kind of feel the same way. Now, granted, third period, I'm not really out there, and I'm going to the locker room right after the game, so I typically don't hear it, but it's been a while.
I stay up there. I stay up there, and I think that they finally, quietly, of course you don't want to admit it, right away. But it's kind of like, I mean, Jared claims to have all this power. Maybe it's actually me who has all this power.
Maybe it is.
Over the DJs in town.
Maybe it is.
They quietly are like, actually, Rexrode's right. No more glorious domination and no more creed. So you're welcome, people who like to not have ear pollution go through your ears. All right, so today I was going to have a PK rant because I kind of misremembered the whole Stroud thing yesterday. And, Jared did some of this on his show, but yeah, PK was wrong about that. And also there was something else I was mad at. PK had some bad takes yesterday. But then Greg Doyle and Caitlin Clark happened. So for those who don't know, Greg Doyle, Indy Star columnist, Caitlin Clark, her intro presser for the Indiana Fever. And here is so if you haven't heard this interaction, the thing he's doing here is he's making the little heart symbol that she makes to her family, like when she, like when she's playing and she sees her family does a little heart thing. He made that to her, and then this ensued.
Hi, Caitlin. Greg Doyle, Indy Star. Real quick, let me do this.
You like that?
I like that you're here. I like that you're here.
I do that at my family after every game, so.
Okay, well, let's start doing it to me, and we'll be able to get along just fine.
And then there was a little bit of weird laughter, and this became the absolute. This became. I mean, I don't know that if I follow a journalist on X who didn't quote tweet this and sound off on it. So, first of all, I'm very interested to hear Robby's thoughts on this, but okay. I'll start with, I know that everyone's going to be shocked to know that I consider Greg Doyle a friend because I know every pseudo boomer sports writer in the world.
You do.
But I mean, he's not a close friend, but we both used to be Gannett sports columnists. We've talked a lot. I like Greg a lot. I think he's very good. I typically agree with his view on things, and I think he does really good work. He also does stuff at press conferences, and that's always been the case. Anybody who covered the Final Four in Atlanta in 2013, go back and read the transcript of Greg Doyle and Jim Boeheim going at each other. When he announced himself, Boeheim's like, "Oh, you would ask a question like that," and then it just went back and forth. But basically, them just yelling at each other. It was quite a scene. So he does stuff like this, but not this often. He makes goofy jokes at pressers. And sometimes I get but we heard the part that people are going nuts about. He is performative at times, kind of like Kaharski. It's just like Kaharski's usually confrontational with it, and Doyle's got jokes. So if you know that and you watch this, you weren't completely shocked by it. And I saw some people say that people laughing, that's awful. But I think they also know it too. They know how he is. So that's important context. Okay. But also I took this and I said, Katie, my wife, Katie, I said, hey, I want you to watch this. I just want your reaction. I showed it to her and she was immediately like, that is disgusting. And he should be fired right now. Now, I don't agree. I don't think that he should be fired, but I do get the disgust. And, it's great to have that context, but it's absolutely not okay what he did. How do you get to that point? How do those words tumble out of your mouth and think that's okay? And I want everybody to imagine that setting. And I want you to imagine, I mean, again, he's a man interviewing a woman in a professional setting. And I think this is something that we should talk about because women's sports is getting bigger and more important. And the WNBA, to me, is about to be much more in the discussion because of Caitlin Clark and some of these other young stars that I think are going to also come in. And I think it's coming to a new level. Flip this around. Let's have a woman ask that question of a woman reporter ask that question of a male athlete and say something like that. What do you think the internet does with that? I mean, it's unfortunate. I don't think Greg Doyle was hitting on Caitlin Clark. Okay. I really don't. and it was just a terrible choice of words. Also, you know, the context is important. It's okay to have context and talk about it. I am interested to know what you think of it.
Well, look, I didn't. Obviously, there was immediate outrage to this yesterday. I'm totally with you that it was very stupid of him. The question was bad. And I think by and large, especially in press conference settings where you've not really even met the person before and you don't have a relationship with them, most of the time just shut up and ask the question. Like there's no time. You don't need to be trying to make jokes. You don't need to be trying to have performative actions. Just get in there, ask the question, get the answer, move on with your day, and do your job asking the question. Like I'll use me as an example, and it's different because this is obviously me, a man, talking to another man. But like I've known Roman Yossi at this point for almost 15 years. Like I can joke around with Roman Yossi. He knows me. I know him. And at the end of the day, we kind of know what's professional, what's not, all those things. Like when you don't know someone and you're at an introductory press conference, it's probably okay just to ask the question. So I'm with you. Like I saw the outrage yesterday. I did not watch that video and think to myself that he was like hitting on Caitlin Clark and he was trying to, like, he was being that public about it. It was an incredibly stupid thing to do. It was an incredibly poor choice of words. And, then he started to just basically tweet through it after, which did not help in terms of the reaction on Twitter. He came out with a column last night at the Indy Star trying to explain himself to, and this as well as I, once that's out there and it's over, like you can come out with as much as you want to come out with. I mean, it's not really going to help the situation. So I just thought it was it's just a stupid time to do that. Like if you're going to joke around and try to make people laugh, like I get that to a certain degree, but you don't even know this person and you're taking something that she does on the court to her family and trying to apply it to you. It was just really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone will move on. I think. And, I
don't think he's going to get fired, by the way.
No, he's not going to get fired. I mean, I did think yesterday, I thought maybe, he might be suspended, but he wrote the apology column and I thought the column was better than the tweet, which was one of those sorry if I offended you kind of things. And it's like, but you got to apologize. I mean, like, think about her in that situation. I mean, she doesn't know you. So she doesn't know these things that you're Mr. Jokey guy at the presser. She just is grossed out, probably, right? And it's like, this is her intro presser at this incredible moment for the city, for the league, for her. She's got this Nike deal. And then that.
And that's why you just shut up and ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the context does matter, but also this is just one of those things that he's just going to have to wear.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think I may be wrong about, I think we've had him on the show before. Like he's been there forever, right? Like he's been in Indy. He's been writing about, sports up there for a long time. So I saw, this is one thing I did see yesterday is like, people got to be really careful who they're giving credentials to. I'm like, well, he's the sports columnist for the Indy Star, so I don't really know what you want him to do, what you wanted the WNBA to do on that part of it. But just got to be a lot smarter than he was in that situation yesterday, no question.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, for anybody who has no idea who he is, then it's just like, what the hell? And that's a totally fair reaction to that. It is just like. If it was just some rando, again, I know all the half-boomer sports writers in the world, but it was just someone I had no idea who it was. I'm like, what? I'd be the same way. How is that person in the presser?
Exactly. So we'll see where this goes from here. And by the way, friend of the show, James Boyd, I thought asked her a great question yesterday about kind of dealing with pressure, and I saw you tweet about that too. So
he did. I tried to say, here's a positive moment from the presser. Let's remember this.
And overall, pretty good day for Caitlin Clark. She's getting an 8-figure shoe deal, so good for her.
Yes, Caitlin's getting her own shoe. Love it. Nike, right?
Yep. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans and the NFL Draft, first round of which starts next Thursday, 1 week away. That's next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. And as we do every Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, we go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our friend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports. Charles, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, gents. How you guys doing this morning?
Doing great. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. We are 1 week away from the NFL draft. We'll get a little bit deeper into the draft here in just a second. I do want to start with you, Charles, on the Bill Belichick stuff. So as we know, Belichick did not get hired this coaching cycle. An interesting piece from ESPN.com coming out about how Robert Kraft essentially told Arthur Blank, owner of the Falcons, hey, you can't trust Bill Belichick. And obviously we know that Raheem Morris got hired in Atlanta. Bill Belichick does not have a job. And it kind of feels like the relationship between Kraft and Belichick, which at once seemed about as close as you could get, has gotten really icy. What do you make of the Belichick story from ESPN.com that they came out with, and where that relates now to his future, trying to get back as a coach in the NFL, and his relationship with Kraft?
Well, so if the report's true, and there's some significant journalistic credentials behind this, like Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta have been pulling back the curtain on a lot of pretty much inside stuff that's been going on in the NFL now for years. And I think, as time's moved on, have proven out to have a very, very good track record on knowing precisely what's going on. Seth Wickersham wrote, "It's better to be feared," that big Patriots, inside look at Tom Brady and the Patriots dynasty, which is probably one of the better books that's ever been written about it. I believe journalistically, like, it's locked up. This feels absolutely similar to things that I was hearing at the time. I wrote back in January when he didn't land the Falcons job that the problem was that Belichick wanted to have full control. And what's interesting to me is, in the report, it's more this kind of back and forth between Belichick and the Falcons, where clearly there was some element of him trying to deny that he wanted full control, but individuals inside the Falcons basically saying, yeah, we don't believe it. we don't believe this guy doesn't want full. He's saying the things he needs to say right now to potentially land this job. But when it comes to implementing what he wants to do, we know what's going to happen here. He's going to want, full control, and there's going to have to be some wholesale changes inside the organization. But then, as you said, this layer on top of it was this idea that Blank and Robert Kraft were talking to each other. It's been known for a long time they have a really close relationship, and that Robert Kraft was allegedly telling Blank, don't trust him. Like, don't trust Bill and what he's saying to you. I think the backdrop of all this is the miniseries, The Dynasty, that came out about the Patriots that obviously was tied to the Kraft family, being producers on some of this stuff. It's clear that docuseries having such a tilt that really put a lot of negative light on Bill throughout the entire thing. When that came out, it was kind of like, are the Krafts, like, it felt like not a hit job, but it definitely felt like writing history very versus Bill. Bill was the problem, when certain things didn't work out or things went haywire. And so a lot of people are like, does this mean the Kraft and Belichick, the Kraft family and Belichick, like, they're at odds now? Is it falling apart? I think, to me, now looking at this report, if it's legitimate, and I think there's plenty of legitimacy to it, it's pretty clear that it's in shambles in terms of the relationship between Kraft and Belichick. Like, this is an awful report to have out there for an NFL owner, especially with a coach like Bill Belichick, who remembers things like this and who is already clearly upset if you talk to people around Belichick, who's already clearly pissed off about that series, The Dynasty. So it's the one thing, and I haven't seen anybody bring this up, that docuseries, The Dynasty, all those interviews where, Kraft is saying some wild stuff about Belichick, that a lot of those interviews, if not all of them, had to be shot before the 2023 season, which now, if you think about it, was he ever going to make it out of that 2023 season with his job? And because what if he goes 13-4? Does all that stuff hit the cutting room floor then? Because Bill's going to stay with the Patriots, so all of a sudden, hey, let's rework this. Now, Kraft saying we didn't have editorial control on this, and he's come out and said that he thought it was too negative toward Belichick and all this stuff, but he didn't have control over the content. But I'm just like, man, you were saying all this stuff about Bill before, like all this prior to the 2023 season playing out. It just, all of this put together feels like that divorce was happening post 2023 almost no matter what. Like Bill might have had to, have a moonshot to be able to survive that season. And it's remarkable just how bad this has gotten. Like I don't know. I'm curious to see how ultimately this gets repaired because I think Bill, especially when it comes to Wickersham, that big book that Wickersham wrote, I presume journalistically, when I read that book, I was like, Kraft was a source for this book. Belichick was a source for this book. Like all the cornerstone people, Brady was a source for this book. All the cornerstone people involved in this were sources for this book. So when those individuals read the book, they probably all knew, hey, we're all talking about each other. So that's what we're saying right now. And everything printed in here, we can just assume came from the mouth of the person who allegedly said it. So it's crazy kind of where this has gone, between Kraft and Belichick. And I'll be curious to see how this gets repaired over the years because it's going to require it for sure.
So I saw like Colin Cowherd. I heard like a clip where he sort of his take from this was like, if you treat people the way Bobby Knight treated people, this is what happens. And man, I just knowing a fair amount about Bobby Knight and what that guy was as a human being to people, and I think that's terribly unfair to Belichick. But I do wonder how many people. And maybe you disagree with me, Charles, but I think that's ridiculous. I think Bobby Knight was an all-time a-hole bully. And again, I'm not saying Belichick was perfect, but I just feel like his legacy is kind of getting savaged here, maybe unfairly.
Okay, well, first off, Bobby Knight is on, like, literally on camera choking Neil Reed, okay? I'm sorry, but that exists, okay? Like, he literally has, like, a physical altercation with a guy, and then whose life, by the way, basically is ruined in the wake of that, in Neil Reed forever speaking out about it, all these things that happened. Bobby Knight had, physical outbursts, throwing chair. I mean, there's a different mentality here that we're talking about with Bobby Knight, both with his players, both with the people surrounding him in organizations. I don't think that's fair to Bill because we have never seen anything rise to that level. Also, the main complaint that players had and individuals that worked around Bill had in that organization were he made football joyless. Like he made it like so methodical, and it was such a machine that it was hard to really enjoy what you were doing. Okay, that's a great complaint. But if you were the Patriots long enough, you won 6 Super Bowls. Okay, you had 6 rings. And guess what? All these individuals, the further on they get down the road, the more they look back, the more they're going to look back at it with rose-colored glasses. They're going to go, yeah, you know what? Now I get it. Now we have this enduring legacy that's never going to go away. And, we understand why he was the way he was. And I'm not defending Bill in terms of how he interacts, with people. I know that definitely. Look, I've heard stories from personnel guys, that have gone through there, things they would tell me about interactions with Bill. And you're just like, geez, like it's got to be a hard guy to work around. The same token with players, just saying like it was hard to really enjoy success. Brady's said that at times, but also these same players defend him, and some of these same people who go through the organization and then go into other organizations are like, yeah, like it's more fun here, but we don't win so many games. Or cool, I can have a conversation with the head coach when I walk by him in the hallway, but it sucks going 6-10 or 6-11. Sometimes the success really is you just have to sacrifice something for it. I think ultimately as time moves on, it'll balance out a little bit more, but it does not surprise me though that there is a kickback initially because truthfully, let's be real, between he and Brady, particularly socially, and particularly when it comes to these documentaries and appearances and all these things, who's the more likable person? I mean, even in that Dynasty series, his interviews, his sit downs for it, I'm like, oh my God. Like, did anyone at all talk to him and be like, Bill, when you sit down and you talk to him about this period of history, don't treat it like a pissed off press conference. Like don't do the mumbling thing, and don't do this is going to reflect. I don't know that he would even care about that, but there's a reason why people see it and then process it as, man, that guy's a dick. He just comes off horribly at times, and I think some of it's deserved, but I also think some of it is just that was the job that he had. And oh, by the way, what we're talking about, Robert Kraft. He made that guy billions and billions of dollars with that success. There's not a huge element of loyalty here in Robert Kraft's part when it comes to some of the things that have unfolded afterward, particularly. I mean, you look at the CSP report, that's true. How do you do that to a guy who has made you money hand over fist for decades and completely turned around not only your fortunes, but the fortunes of your franchise forever?
Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports with us here on Robby and Rexrode. So, Charles, obviously the Titans slated to pick at number 7. The team right before them, the New York Giants, at number 6. How realistic do you think quarterback is as an option for the Giants, given the fact that Daniel Jones just signed that deal, that massive deal, 2 years ago?
I think it's real. It's funny because when the draft process started, and I was talking to different people across the league, and they're like, why on earth would anybody inside the Giants, from general manager to head coach, go, yeah, let's draft a rookie quarterback now, and kind of restart the process here when it feels like 2024 is like a make it or break it year. Like your career's over if you do not get over the hump and turn this thing in the right direction meaningfully, which most people presume you can't do that with a rookie quarterback. And so I believe a lot of those assessments. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why would you do this? Then, of course, ownership comes out and says, hey, I've told them if there's a special quarterback here, you do it. Go get that player, and I am signing on for this. I think that changed the dynamic a little bit. I think there are people who in the media, prominent, who I believe they have very close relationships with Giants ownership as well as elements of that staff, who have continually pushed a quarterback in their direction, which always raises my eyebrow. And look, Daniel Jones, I think it's pretty clear that there's an assessment inside the organization that if there's a ceiling, they've seen it. And, last year was not a representation of the ceiling, but 2022 probably was. And if that is as good as this is ultimately going to get, you go into the assessment that I think has become more realistic the last several years in the NFL, where owners are going, do I have a Super Bowl winning quarterback or not? How does this factor into our chances at winning a Super Bowl? Do we have to drag somebody to the Super Bowl in order to win it? And I do think inside that organization, Jones has gotten a reputation of being, we've talked before, it's a common scouting term, trucks and trailers. He's definitely a trailer. He's not a truck. He's not going to pull you there. You're going to pull him there. And given what this class is giving, and I think here, another thing you have to consider about the quarterback, and do you take it? You're not taking them next year, okay? Next year's class, at least right now, and I know other people will surface over the course of a college football season, but you're not feeling great about what the quarterback class looks like next year. Very poor. Like I was doing a running backs piece this year, literally in the last 48 hours, putting it together about how, just poor the running backs position is from the star standpoint, like the one that you're taking to define the class. And I had an evaluator said to me, he's like, hey, this is the ebb and flow. Just wait until we get to the quarterbacks next year, because it's going to be like the Kenny Pickett year, where you're like, is there a first-round quarterback in this group? And if so, where do they get taken? And you're not going to feel great about that. So if you're in the market for the quarterback, you're kind of looking in a 2-year window instead of a 1-year window. You're going, if we don't get him now, are we going to get him next year? Or are we going to be happy with who we get next year? And let's say it's J.J. McCarthy for the Giants, right? Where would J.J. McCarthy fit in next year's draft? He'd probably be the first quarterback taken in next year's draft, given what else is going to be on the board. So that, to me, is what makes it real, particularly when you look in that 2-year window. I'm not saying they're taking a quarterback. The last thing I want to do right now is pin anybody's draft pick to them. And by the way, I'm a little scared that everybody thinks Joe Alt's going to the Tennessee Titans now because I'm like, this probably means it's not happening. But yeah, I mean, that's when you're thinking about the Giants, definitely thinking windows, and the window to get a quarterback next year, particularly a young guy, is not great.
Well, speaking of the Titans and speaking of quarterbacks, I brought this up yesterday, and I brought it up to Paul Kaharski, and I should have gone back and remembered everything that happened.
Oh, no.
But just as,
when you start a question off with some regret you have with something you did yesterday,
may not be good.
Sorry, Joe, you already dove into Greg Doyle and Caitlin Clark. Like, let's go into something else.
Yeah, this is low. Believe me, this is low on my list of lifetime regrets. Don't get me wrong, but I did kind of like misremember. But you can just go yes or no if you want on this. But just as a point, just to make sure that we have this correct, you do believe the Titans, one way or the other, tipped off or it got to Houston that the Titans were looking to move up to Stroud, and that did change the Houston Texans' approach on the first night of the draft, correct?
I do remember as we led up to the draft that day, I do remember the theme that, hey, the Titans are looking to move up, and the player that was being attached, or the position that was being attached, was quarterback. Well, at that time, Bryce Young was going one, right? I don't remember anyone connecting, like, oh, it's the move up for Will Levis, or it's a move up for Anthony Richardson. I do remember I remember like literally texting with some people who were like, oh, this totally makes sense. Vrabel, obviously, he's wired into Ohio State. He totally understands, that like if there's somebody out there who gets it with CJ Stroud, it's going to be Mike Vrabel. It's going to have more inside knowledge of that guy than anyone else. And at the same time, if there's this belief that he's the real deal, God forbid he's in your division, and now you have to deal with him constantly. And so there was like this strong connective tissue to the Titans wanting to get up there. And the natural trade partner at 3 was the Cardinals, who the Texans had been talking to, by the way. And so the Texans, I have no doubt, became aware that the Titans were trying to move up to 3 and that their target was ultimately going to be CJ Stroud, which is what informed them to take Stroud at 2, to remove. Like, they're sitting there going, okay, well, we have to deal with potentially losing this guy we want. We want to move up to 3. We've already got the second pick. We take Will Anderson at 2. They're dealing out. They're taking, they're ultimately going to end up taking Stroud or trading. The Titans are ultimately going to end up, dealing up and taking Stroud basically out of our hands. So that's how they ended up pulling the deal that they ultimately made for him. So, I mean, that's the way I remember it. Is there some, I don't know, is there some like,
well, no, it's just
denying this now? Like, what's the,
well, yeah, I mean, basically, yes. I mean, basically, it's a long story. Again, I remembered wrong. I went back and read what I wrote, and it was, again, there were deleted tweets. It was pretty obvious that in some way, it had gotten to the Texans. Again, we don't know. As you said, they had been talking to him, but so I don't think anybody has the absolute like direct link confirmation, but it appears that way.
Well, look, people knew, especially as we got really close to the draft, it was like people knew that the Titans were having conversations, right? And not only that, the Cardinals, what do you think the Cardinals are doing when they're on the phone, right? When they're talking to anybody, when they're, and even if leading into the draft, those conversations aren't as frantic as you might think at that time, they're getting an idea of like, who's the market, who do we have, who can potentially move, trade with, and how can we up the ante with whoever we're talking to. I guess if people are sitting there going, no, there's no way it got out that the Titans were moving up to Stroud or moving up to 3 to get Stroud, I think that's ridiculous. I think that's just foolish. I think why would you believe that? Why would you believe that the Titans or the Texans had no idea that the Titans would be moving to 3 to take CJ Stroud? And furthermore, why would you? I don't know. I don't know what the controversy is there. And I know that we're talking about, Diana Rossini had the tweet, that during the course of the draft that talked about, the Titans haven't wanted to get to 3 to get Stroud, and that was ultimately deleted. And I know there was not really a reasoning behind that and everything. Look, I'm not going to speculate on that, but as a reporter, I've definitely tweeted things at times where sources have been like, and I'm not speculating on her. I can tell you, me personally, I've certainly tweeted things where I've had sources who are like, hey, with teams, like, whether something went down or not, I would rather we didn't have that piece of information out there. So I don't know. People can make up their minds about that. I just don't think it's controversial. That let's be honest. I mean, again, does it not? You think Vrabel didn't have connections at Ohio State? You think he didn't probably have a better idea than everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it all added up. The question was whether the Titans screwed up that day and let too much of the that's all it is. I mean, yes, everything.
How do you know it was the Titans, though? Let me ask you this. I mean, how do we know it was the Titans for sure, right? You don't necessarily know that. You don't know that somebody inside the Cardinals organization doesn't leak to the Texans like, hey, this is in your division. Like, do you want to you don't know that didn't happen. This presumption that we all know everything that happens. I'll give you a draft story real quick. I'll throw this in real quick at you. This is the craziest draft story I've ever heard. It's 100% true. There was a member of a staff, and this is during the 20 years I've covered the league. There's a member of a staff who had a very close tie to another member of a staff in the NFL draft. The member of the staff who was on team 1 knew his job was not going to last after the draft was over. He knew he was dead man walking, and they were coming up on a pick where they wanted to take a certain player. He knew the other team also loved that player. He'd had conversations with this person on this other team, and that same team was right behind them at their pick. He left the draft room, went to the bathroom, called this person he knew on the other staff and said, hey, just so you know, we're taking so-and-so at this pick. They traded up ahead of him and took the player ahead of him. And I heard this from the GM of the team later, that they were incensed, absolutely furious that this thing happened. This is not something that's out there public. It's not but you have no clue what is going on between staff members on teams, particularly people in personnel departments who might be on the verge of being let go later or part of a change in terms of a staff.
That happens a lot. They stay on for drafts. It
is. Yes, Joe, it is not unusual. I literally have had guys are out on the road right now during this process who told me one thing and then came back later and said, hey, so came across these guys on the road doing this, had drinks. I can tell you right now, I was wrong. Here's what I was told in terms of their certain stack at a position or whatever. Personnel people are not great at completely keeping their mouths closed, particularly to each other when they're friends and they're drinking. You have no clue how these things ultimately get out, and don't just assume it's this linear thing. And if you don't know exactly, how it happened, well, it's got to be the Titans' fault. They're the ones who blew this. Not necessarily. You don't know how that information got transferred over, particularly when there's a third team involved.
Well, Charles, great stuff, man. As always, really appreciate you taking time to be with us. We'll have the NFL draft coming up next Thursday, so looking forward to that as well and your perspective on that. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Okay, take care, guys.
Yep, Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what Charles had to say, get back into the Preds, their matchup officially against the Vancouver Canucks as well. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Don't miss Nashville's best 2024 NFL draft coverage on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Next Thursday, stop by Twin Peaks in Madison at 6 o'clock for live 2024 NFL draft coverage. Get the best draft coverage as we break down each pick at the home of the 29-degree beer. Coverage presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, ESPN Bet, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode. Make sure you check out this week's Nashville's Best Deal. It's Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. Gift card only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville as well. Appreciate Charles Robinson for being with us in the last segment. Joe, the matchup is set for the Nashville Predators. Dallas gets a point last night in overtime. They eventually win it in shootout to get the 2 points, but after they punched their ticket to the overtime matchup, we knew it was going to be Nashville and Vancouver in round one, and the Predators are going to start on the road. Still no announcement as to when game one of that series will be. I'm hoping that we get some sort of an announcement on that today, but we'll wait and see. But now it's official. We know that it's the Predators and Vancouver. What do you make of the first-round matchup for the Nashville Predators?
Well, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the series. I think it's going to be a good series. I think the upset to me is this series not going 6 games at least. And I think it has a real chance to go the distance. I think you've got, I do think similar teams of similar quality now that the Preds have become what they became. 28 games, gosh. That's almost exactly a third of the season by my excellent math that I just did in my head. Just a little bit more than a third of the season. 25-3 is what the Preds did in the last 28 to put themselves in the playoffs to get wild card one. And they are not the same team Vancouver saw when Vancouver handled the Preds when they played, earlier in the season. So I think it's a pretty even matchup, frankly, based on the way these teams are playing. And obviously the Canucks later in the season were suffering from not having Thatcher Demko, their goaltender, and he's back. So that's a big deal, obviously. But I think this is a good matchup, and I do think the one clear edge that you would give the Preds, of course, is playoff experience. How much does that matter? I don't know, but it's something.
It's something. It'll be interesting to see exactly how much and what that means. I'm with you. I think it's going to be a really good series. I think it can go either way. I was watching the TNT broadcast last night between Dallas and St. Louis, and once it went into overtime, they were talking about the Vancouver-Nashville matchup. Eddie Olczyk said, I think this one's got a chance to go a long time. Got to be a long series. And, Vancouver's the favorite in this one. I think they opened up at minus 150 odds last night on FanDuel to win the series. Preds at plus 125. So we knew that the Preds, regardless of if it was Vancouver or Edmonton or Dallas, that they were going to be the underdog heading into the series. They will be, and most people are going to pick Vancouver to win. Look, I think if you're the Predators and you play the way you played the last part of the season here, you're going to give yourself a good shot. And it may not be good enough at the end of the day, and it's going to come down to what every playoff series comes down to. Can you get big goals at big times from your key players? Can you have other lines step up? And what does your goaltending look like? I mean, those are 3 really important things this time of year in the playoffs. But I said it earlier in the show, and I'm sticking by it. I think the Preds are going to win. I think they're going to win in 7 games. And I like this matchup better than the Dallas matchup. Had it been Dallas, I probably would have gone with Stars in 6. But I'm going to go with the Predators in 7 in this matchup against Vancouver. And again, I think it could go either way, but I think the Predators really have a chance in this series, Joe.
Well, if we're making picks, and since actually you'll have much better hockey talk with Bingen instead of me tomorrow. But if we're making picks today, I'm going to go Canucks in 7. Should Nick Keyser be forced to make a pick too? Make a pick.
Keyser, are you prepared to make a pick?
Sure, why not? I would say Canucks in 6, honestly. Okay. I really would. There's a lot of merit to the fact of the playoff experience, but you can't read too much into it. But I do think at the end of the day, the Canucks are a little more talented than Nashville, and I think that the special teams will be the biggest difference, as it usually is in a series. but I think Vancouver is going to make Nashville pay for their mistakes, and I don't know if Nashville's ready to handle a series by themselves quite yet and dig one out. They have the great leaders here, but is it going to be enough? And I just don't think that's going to be the case, but maybe they'll prove me wrong.
So you're going Vancouver in 6. Rexrode's going Vancouver in 7. I'm going Preds in 7. I am WHMR here on the program.
WHMR against WHTR. I tell you what, 2 against 1.
That's right. We'll take your thoughts on the matchup, the Predators and Canucks coming up in round 1. Who do you think is going to win the series? How do you like the Predators' chances in this series? Your thoughts on all that on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. That's coming up next. Join Nashville Super Speedway in the city of Lebanon for Speedway on the Square this Saturday from 1 to 6 p.m. in downtown Lebanon. Stop by, bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400 NASCAR Cup Series race at 3:30. That's coming up this Saturday in downtown Lebanon. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Hey, folks, Joe Rexrode here for FanDuel Sportsbook. NBA play-in tournament still going on, getting down to it, and then we're going to get to the full playoffs. That play-in tournament gives teams a chance, of course, to play their way into the 8-team playoff on each side. It only seems right that new customers on FanDuel Sportsbook can play their way into $150. All you have to do is place a $5 bet, any $5 bet. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, to use during the NBA playoffs, and they're going to be an amazing playoffs. You can, of course, bet on all kinds of things. You can bet on your money line and point spreads, over-unders, player props, assists, rebounds, first basket score, all kinds of things. One thing I'm looking at with the play-in, I think Miami is going to beat Chicago. Big win for Chicago. Kobe White, 42 points. Miami lost a heartbreaker to the Sixers. I think Miami is going to get past Chicago here. Go to FanDuel.com/Joe102 to get started. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you must be 21 or older and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issue is now withdrawable. Bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbet.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call the Tennessee Red Line, 800-889-9789.
Welcome back in. Final segment of the day. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away. A pair of tickets to see the music of Pink Floyd with the Nashville Symphony. If I could speak, the Nashville Symphony. What is a symphony?
Close enough.
Close enough. 2 tickets. The music of Pink Floyd with the Nashville Symphony at Ascend Amphitheater coming up on Sunday, May 5th. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Also score big this spring with Lee Company and the Nashville Predators in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. Go to leecompany.com/giveaway in order to enter. Contest entries are accepted until this Saturday. Lee Company, all you need. The matchup is set. Preds and Canucks coming up in the first round of the playoffs. So, Joe, still one matchup to be determined. Dallas will take on either L.A. in the first round or Vegas. Both Vegas and L.A. play tonight. So if Vegas wins, then they'll be taking on Edmonton.
We'll think of a point.
They
have the same regulation wins.
Then it goes from regulation to row right after that. So that would be, let's see here, if I could get things to come up here. Vegas has 41 in regulation and overtime, and I can't get LA's to pull up on my app right now, so that's fun. LA's is also 41. So then we get into other tiebreakers. I'd have to do some research on what the third tiebreaker is.
But if Vegas wins, just gets the 2 points, that's it. That ends
it's over.
Vegas
Yeah.
is, and they will.
They're playing the Ducks, so I would hope so.
You would think so. So, Vegas-Edmonton. Ooh, that's fun.
Vegas-Edmonton will be fun. That's probably not what Edmonton is hoping for in the first round, but
probably
we'll
not.
See. We'll see. So, Dallas, in that scenario, would take on the Kings, which means if it is Edmonton-Vegas, that's something to pay attention to if you're a Predators fan, because if you do beat Vancouver, you will take on the winner of Edmonton and Vegas after that, which is a heck of a second-round matchup. So, here we are, Joe. I'm already looking ahead to the second round for the Preds. How about that?
Lots of plane flights. Lots of long plane flights. Vegas is like 3.5 hours, though, right?
It's not that bad, yeah.
It's not. It's not
way
as
better
bad
than
as
going to Edmonton or Vancouver.
Yeah. So I guess root for Vegas. I guess see if you can beat Vancouver.
Yeah, go from there.
Start there.
Start from there. You know, it's interesting. You know, we were in the locker room yesterday. I was talking to Yossi and Luke Shen and a couple other guys, and to get their perspective on this week. So the Predators practiced yesterday after having the day off Tuesday. They got another day off today. They're practicing tomorrow, and then I assume traveling to Vancouver probably on Saturday, but I guess we'll wait and see what happens on that front. So the series probably starting Sunday or Monday, I would assume, and then you're going from there. So that would be, at that point, basically a week off for the Predators. So how are they going to respond coming out? We've heard some people saying, you know, they're scared on the text line of them coming out flat. I wouldn't be scared of that. Like, they're not going to come out flat. I think that the energy level is going to be there. I think the main thing is, like, practicing this week, and they went through about an hour yesterday of, you know, pretty fast-paced, quick up-and-down practice, which, by the way, Philip Forsberg did not participate in, which saw a lot of that down the stretch.
Yeah.
But puck execution, like that's the main thing to me, is like, can you keep your game sharp where you're making the right plays with the puck, where, you know, the timing that's required, can you keep that going? Does that get thrown off with a week off? There's a lot of the little nuances of the game with the puck that I think that the Predators have to do a good job of making sure they're on top of that this week, because you don't want to have, Joe, you know, 2 periods into game one, you're still trying to figure out your timing and your puck control and all those things.
Yeah, exactly. It's execution, and that is, you know, it requires absolute precision, and that's something that you would naturally think could easily get a little bit off if you're not constantly doing something. So yeah, people be flying around, adrenaline, energy off the charts.
Oh yeah,
you said it earlier. I mean, sometimes that hurts you. So, and that's where, you know, maybe the veteran team, maybe these guys like Shannon O'Reilly, they got good breathing exercises. I mean, I don't know, but certainly they've been in all kinds of situations. So can they translate that to some of the young guys on the team? You know, Evangelista, Novak, these guys are going through the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time.
Jack says, I need revenge for the 2011 series. Preds ran into a buzzsaw that year. That was quite the series between the Predators and the Canucks, and Pekka Rinne played out of his mind, and that's when Predators fans began to really hate Ryan Kessler for the first time. So a totally different set of cast and characters this time around, but going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this series coming up, and hopefully we get a start time announced later today. Joseph, have yourself a wonderful weekend. We're going to have Adam Vingan in the house tomorrow talking a little hockey.
Yep, I got to do a little dorm moving out up in East Lansing. I also, before I go, I would like to say Chris Harris got footage of me. I don't even know what the heck I was doing with my face sitting there next to Roman Josi, but for the record, I like Roman Josi, and I thought he was saying good things, but it looked to me, so actually my father-in-law was like, that's the face you need to use when people try to date Caroline. So I don't know what the heck was going on with my face there.
Two beautiful men.
People having fun with my face on Twitter, too.
One beautiful man, and then Roman Josi.
Yeah,
does it for us today. Jason Big Joe up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.